In the early 1990s, Boston had a reputation it didn't want. It was the armored car robbery capital of America. A series of audacious, military-style heists were plaguing the city, all executed with a precision that left law enforcement with almost no evidence to go on. These robberies were the work of a crew from Charleston, a tight-knit 1 square mile neighborhood that lived by a single unbreakable rule: you don't talk to the police. For years, this ruthless gang operated with impunity, shielded by their community's infamous code of silence. But on August 24th, 1994, a single violent act during a robbery in a sleepy New Hampshire town would give the FBI the key to tearing that wall down, brick by brick. To really get how this crew, known as the Boston Bandits or the No Name Gang, could pull off dozens of armed robberies, you first have to understand Charleston, American enclave. Townies were bound by generations of loyalty and a profound mistrust of outsiders and authority. This wasn't just a social preference, it was a way of life, an almost tribal code. For a small element in the neighborhood, becoming a good bank robber was seen as a rite of passage, a trade passed down from one generation to the next. This environment is what cultivated the infamous Code of Silence. It was an unwritten law enforced by fear and fierce loyalty that paralyzed law enforcement for decades. Between 1975 and 1992, Charleston saw 49 murders. An incredible 33 of them went unsolved. Cops often had a good idea who the perpetrators were, but they couldn't find a single witness willing to testify. People who talked to the authorities were seen as rats, and in Charleston, everyone knew what happened to Rat. The criminals knew this, and they exploited it. And it was inside this fortress of silence that Anthony Shea and his crew built their criminal empire. Anthony Shea, a career criminal from Charleston, was the leader of one of the most effective robbery crews of the 1990s. Alongside him were men like Matty McDonald, who had a sordid, violent history; Michael O'Halloran, knew as a quiet man; the calculating Stephen Burke; and Patrick McGonigal, a veteran 10%er who would set up jobs for a cut of the take. They were a team of highly trained, highly committed professionals who devoted their lives to stealing as much money as they could. Their methods were meticulous. They conducted extensive surveillance, studying armed car schedules for weeks. On the night before a job, the crew would stay together, no drinking, no drugs. They operated like a machine. Their heist, which earned them the nickname the Minuteman Crew, for their speed and precision, involved stolen vehicles, switch cars, and assault minivans with blacked out windows. They wore full masks and gloves and even spread hair from barbershop floors inside their getaway car to throw off any potential forensic evidence. For years, they were ghosts. They hit targets across Northeast and even down in Florida, stealing millions from carefully planned armed robberies. Notable scores including $600,000 in Lynn, Massachusetts, and $300,000 in Seabrook, New Hampshire. With each successful heist, their legend grew, and so did the frustration of law enforcement. The new FBI Boston Bank Robbery Task Force had their suspicions about Shea, since the jobs looked a lot like his earlier Minuteman robberies, but they had no real evidence to prove it. The crew seemed unstoppable, but their perfect streak was about to come to a bloody and inevitable end. On August 24th, 1994, the crew targeted an armed car in Hudson, New Hampshire. A quiet town completely unprepared for the violence about to unfold. Almost immediately, the plan went wrong. The crew's professionalism, once their greatest asset, was allegedly compromised by drug use, particularly heroin, by Shea and McDonald. During the robbery, a struggle broke out. Guard Ronald Normandeau was shot, thrown into the crew's minivan, and executed. The other guard, Lawrence Johnson, fought back and managed to pull the mask off one of his attackers before he too was brutally killed. The crew got away with close to $500,000, but they had crossed the line. This wasn't a clean professional heist. It was a cold-blooded double murder. The senseless killing of the two working-class guards sent shockwaves to the region and turned public sentiment. Even in places like Charleston against them, for the first time, the crew made critical errors. They fled without their usual care, leaving a mask behind in the armed car and other trace evidence. One of the getaway vehicles, a rental truck, had been rented under Patrick McGonigal's real name. This single botched robbery, born from a lethal mix of violence and sloppiness, had just given the FBI the first thread to unravel their entire operation. The Hudson murders changed everything. The investigation became the top priority for a joint task task force of the FBI and state police from both New Hampshire and Massachusetts. The mission was clear: find these killers, no matter what. The FBI's evidence response team, led by Special Agent Charlie Walsh, went over the rental truck rented by Gonigal. Inside, they found a crucial fingerprint belonging to another known bank robber, Stephen Burt. The FBI now had a name, a link. They launched a massive surveillance operation, putting a full court press on Shea and his associates. They tracked their every move, bugged their cars, and followed them as they cased new bank. And yet, the code of silence remained a formidable wall. Investigators knocking on doors in Charleston were met with denial after denial. No one would talk. The FBI knew they needed someone on the inside. Their target became Stephen Connolly, a mid-level drug dealer who was an acquaintance of the crew. At first, Stephen refused to cooperate, honoring the code, but when he was arrested on unrelated charges, investigators saw their chance. They began a patient campaign, not with intimidation, but by supporting his girlfriend, offering small amounts of money for essentials while he was locked up. Little by little, they built trust. This slow, methodical pressure was about to create the first major crack in Charleston's impenetrable wall. The breakthrough finally came when Stephen Connell's girlfriend convinced him to talk. In a 4-hour debriefing, Stephen laid out the entire criminal enterprise, detailing years of robberies and, most importantly, implicating the crew in the Hudson murders. He named Anthony Shea as the leader. For the first time, the FBI had a witness who could bring down the crew from the inside. With Stephen's cooperation, the FBI devised a strategy to break the others. They had Stephen transferred to the same prison as Maddie McDonald. Taped conversation between them provided more admissions that linked the crew to the Hudson killings. Armed with this intelligence and the forensic evidence from the Hudson scene, the case against the bandits was becoming ironclad. The pressure was mounting. In August of 1995, the task force listening in on a bugged car caught Shea and 2 new associates as they were preparing to rob a bank in Wakefield, Massachusetts. They were taken down right in the parking lot. Back at the FBI's Boston office, Shea stood tall and said, "I have nothing to say to anybody about anything." A final defiant nod to the code he had lived by. But it was too late. The code was broken. Facing overwhelming evidence and the threat of life in prison, other members of Charleston's underworld threw in the towel. Career bank robbers began to testify against their own, including brother against brother. The wall of silence that had protected them for so long had finally crumbled. The trials that followed saw Anthony Shea, Stephen Burke, Michael O'Halloran, and Matthew McDonald convicted on a host of federal charges, including racketeering and carjacking in connection with the Hudson robbery. Most received life sentences, bringing their reign of terror to an end. More than just imprisoning a gang, the takedown of the Boston Bandits signaled the end of an era. The case, which famously inspired elements of the movie The Town, marked the breaking of Charleston's code of silence. Coupled with the forces of gentrification, the neighborhood's reputation slowly began to change, loosening the grip of fear that had held it for so long. The story is a stark reminder that even the most impenetrable walls of silence can be brought down. It took years of relentless police work, a single deadly mistake, and the courage of a few individuals to finally speak up, bringing justice for the victims and enclosing a violent chapter in Boston's history. If you found this story compelling, please hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into criminal history. Let me know in the comments what case you would like for me to cover next. And thank you all for watching.